Good afternoon. Why don't you introduce yourself?
All right, I'm David Silverman. I'm president of American Atheists.
And can you explain exactly what American Atheist is and what the mission is?
American Atheists is an advocacy group. We advocate for the separation of church and state from the point of view of the atheists. We support the separation of church and state because that's how you get religious freedom. And we want people to know not only that we strive to make it acceptable to be an atheist in America, not only from a legal perspective, but also from a societal perspective. We want atheist equality in the hearts and minds of America's citizenry, not just in the laws.
And why our podcast is about good governance, where government gets it right and where government gets it wrong. So why is that? Why is your organization's mission important to the concept of good governance?
Okay, so governance means the purpose of the government is to allow people to live their lives, okay, and to take as little from the people as possible in order to allow people to have whatever freedoms they want. The best government is the smallest government necessary to protect the right of people to live their lives. So when the government says that religion is a part of them, that they specifically help one religion, or when they help religion on the whole, they give the religious population an advantage over the non-religious population. They grow the government unnecessarily and do it only for the name of themselves. The merger of church and state is great for the preachers and for the politicians who are in the pockets of the preachers, but it's lousy for the citizenry, because the more theocratic a country gets, the less choice people have, the less freedom people have. And there's really no reason for a government to be in the business of limiting choice for its people on something as benign as thought.
What are some of the signs that you see that we're slipping towards a theocracy?
Well, the most important sign that we're seeing is the surge in voucher schemes right now, the surge in the faith-based initiatives, where the government is actually using churches, paying churches to provide social services. But they're not providing any sort of oversight. They're not making sure the churches are doing what they're doing. They're not making sure the churches are providing those services evenly. They're not even making sure the churches obey the law. They're actually funneling money through voucher schemes, through faith-based initiatives, into churches. So now we've got a situation where a government is promoting religion. Again, forced taxation. Nobody gets a choice on their taxes. They have to pay them. And that taxation is going to churches, people who are trained in preaching, not in social work. They're trained in preaching. And they're giving them social workers' jobs. So we have trained social workers, secular social workers who are unemployed, and preachers doing social workers' jobs poorly, with no supervision and with no oversight.
If there was the government controls and the supervision, as you alluded to there, that's missing, would you be okay with these types of voucher systems, or would you still have a problem with that?
Well, voucher systems are for public schools. When I'm talking about vouchers, I'm talking about public schools. And no, I would not. Public school vouchers simply take money from the public school system and thrust them into the private school sector, which is almost always the religious schools. And that hurts the public school systems dramatically. It makes the problems worse, and it helps funnel money into the religion. So there's no hope for that. As far as the faith-based initiative is concerned, if you think back to before George W. Bush, there was a system in place where a church that wanted to perform charitable acts could file a 501c3 non-profit educational fund, not religious but educational, obey the laws, and get tax deductions. And they could file for grants from the government and provide social services. Now, they had to go through hoops to do it, just like secular groups. They had to be overseen. They had to report back to the government. They had to declare all their money. They had to treat everybody equally. They couldn't discriminate in their hiring. And that's legal. There's nothing wrong with that. If the church wants to do that, that's fine. What we have now is a situation where churches, because they're churches, not because they're good at what they do, but simply because they're churches, can file for faith-based initiative funding, get it, and do with it as it sees fit. Discriminate in the hiring, perform services poorly, possibly, usually, and there's no oversight. And that's illegal. And that's fundamentally flawed. And it's one of my major disappointments with the Obama administration.
What do you see as some of the issues where faith-based organizations and/or religion is impacting the public schools, other than the voucher system, but direct effect on the public school system?
Well, the most obvious direct impact that the religious community has on the public school system is happening in the textbooks. The Texas textbooks incident is clearly a situation.
Can you explain?
Yeah, basically what they're doing is they took over the Texas School Board and they changed the textbooks to be basically to issue a revisionist history of the textbooks. They reduced the role of Thomas Jefferson, and they increased the role of the more religious founding fathers, Patrick Henry. And they're making it seem like this is a Christian nation, even though it's not. There is no mention of the Treaty of Tripoli. There is no mention of the separation of church and state. It's really, really minimized, and that's there in an attempt to legitimize their religion for the kids. One of the things that I've said over and over again is that religion is very weak. It has nothing on which to stand. It needs people to be brainwashed. It needs people to say, hey, look, my money has in God we trust on it. Look at that. We're a Christian nation. It needs that legitimacy that it gets from church and state merging. And when they get into the school board and they can actually change the textbooks, or when they get into the science classes and actually teach the controversy of the invisible magic man in the sky being science, this is how they damage our entire population of children in the public school system. Imagine the invisible magic man in the sky as a realistic scientific concept. God did it as an answer, as a scientific answer. That's ridiculous. And when we look on a global scale, and we look at our kids who went through that school system versus the Indian kids or the Korean kids who go through a school system that teaches critical thinking, well, it's no wonder they do better on tests than we do. And it's no wonder it's no wonder we're so low on the polls, so low on the ratings in the school systems.
Why is it, Texas is just one state, why is it important for the rest of the country if Texas changes their textbooks?
Because it's a big state. And because Texas is such a big state, a lot of states don't go through the effort of having their own textbook standards. So they use the Texas textbook standards. This is a very, very smart move by the religious right. A lot of people didn't see this coming. But the Texas textbook standard is used in about a dozen other states that are now hopefully going to be changing their policies and actually adopting their own standards. The publishers of the Texas textbooks, the publishers of the textbooks used in Texas publish so many books because Texas is so big that other schools just kind of pull those textbooks in and use them. It's a volume discount.
The last question, the Constitution specifically says there should be no religious test for public office.
Right.
It seems like there is a religious test in the United States.
There absolutely is, yes.
Can you comment on that?
Well, there's no legal religious test, but there absolutely certainly is a social religious test. People cannot get elected, and that is a direct result of the fact that people don't understand that morality and religion are totally different. People think that if you're not religious, you're not good, you're not honest. And it's part of the lack of critical thinking that people they're just not thinking about this. Religious people do harm, and they toss it off. And then they say that atheists can't be good because they don't have religion. They don't think. It's part of the brainwashing that they received as children. A lot of people don't understand the fact that most people are religious because they are victims of brainwashing. People I get people from atheists come to me all the time and say, I can't get it through my brother's head that this doesn't make any sense. That's because he's not wired that way. He's brainwashed. He's a damaged person. And a lot of religious people are damaged people because they have been circumcised at birth and christened and gone through all the indoctrination and all of the brainwashing since childhood and told not to question. And if they're told not to question God, they just follow blindly.
I actually thought of one more question, coming off of my last question. I've been here at the meeting all day today, and I've been at other atheist and skeptical meetings, and I've actually never heard anybody use they always use the First Amendment, and they always use Thomas Jefferson's letter to the pastors in Connecticut, but they never seem to use that phrase that there shall be no religious test for office. Why do you think that's not used more in debate?
Because there is no religious test in office.
Right,
okay?
but it's a proof text that the founding fathers did not want religion to be a centerpiece of political discussion.
It is proof. It's not as good a proof as the Treaty of Tripoli. Okay?
Correct.
The Treaty of Tripoli is the smoking gun.
Can you actually explain that for?
The Treaty of Tripoli is the first treaty signed by the United States of America. Now, it's important for people to understand the law of the land is the Constitution, every treaty we've signed, and every law that's been passed by the Supreme Court or through Congress. That's law of the land. Of those in order, the Constitution is first, the treaties are second, and the laws passed by the Supreme Court and the legislatures are third in that order. The Treaty of Tripoli was signed under order of George Washington, signed by John Adams. It was ratified unanimously by the founding Senate, and it specifically says that the government of the United States is not in any sense founded in the Christian religion. It's a done deal. It's a slam dunk. It's our dream, and it's totally muted in the education system in this country. So that's one of the things that we at American Atheists are trying to make people understand. There is no doubt here. There's no room for debate. There's no question. We have a signed document by every founding senator. It was ratified unanimously. And it states it categorically, specifically, that the government of the United States is not founded in any sense in the Christian religion. It's a done deal. And people need to know that more important. People need to know that emphatically. People need to have it right off the top of their heads, because we can't lose an argument with that.
Great, thank you. I appreciate you doing the interview, and a great conference.
My pleasure. I'm glad you're enjoying